So, hi everyone. Let's wait maybe 10 seconds before some people still leaving. That's what happens if you're after the president. So we're going to talk about future hope. Thank you. We're going to talk about future hope. Today is the most extraordinary period in history to live in. And we have more technology than we can ever imagine to solve the world's biggest problems. So I want to get started by talking about moonshots. Show me your hands. Who of you has heard of the word moonshot before? That's considerably more than in the Netherlands. If we talk about moonshot, according to the dictionary, it's an act of sending a spacecraft to the moon, like the Apollo 11. Or in the US, when a player hits a massive home run out of the park, we say, wow, that was a moonshot. But what if we take it one step further? If we wonder, what is moonshot thinking? I have some problems with this thing. Moonshot thinking. Well, these are the people who choose to be bothered by solving one of the world's biggest problems with an audacious project and using disruptive technology. And me, I'm one of those people. So I'm crazy passionate about transforming today's localized healthcare systems into one hyper-connected world. And for me, this was very simple, because when I grown up, I heard all the stories about people dying because of a lack of access. So for me, that was a big motivation. And for today, I thought I was invited what to talk about. And I want to share something meaningful to you. So I want to talk about connectivity, how connectivity is changing our world, how it has brought us to the state of the world where we're currently at, and what it will do in the next few years. I also want to give you an example of how technology is able to solve the world's biggest problems. And I thought, what better than talk about how I started my own company and how we're working on creating access to life-saving information. And as a third, how you can apply those principles to your own case, because many of you will also be entrepreneurs or maybe thinking about your own business or already established. Like one said, you're never too young to learn or too old. If we talk about technology, why would you use technology? What can it do? Now, if we look back in 1967, when there was the first Apple computer, it was an amazing innovation. It only used 4 kilobytes of RAM. If we go back forward to 1983, when there was the first mobile phone, the Motorola Dynatec 800X. It costed $4,000, but it died after 30 minutes. But it enabled people to connect wherever you live in the world. But if we move forward, then in the 1990s, internet went mainstream and provided people a means to connect through the web. Only 0.04% of the people were first using it. And if you look here, we have the first supercomputer. It was used for climate change. It was 55 million, and used 1.3 teraflops. And to place that in perspective, see where we are today. We have children with these devices in their hands. It's the same amount of compute power that we first used to solve climate change. Another meta trend that we see in the world is genomics. I'm sure you might have heard of it, also if you're not active in healthcare. And what we had is only in the beginning of 2000 when the first human genome was sequenced. And it was a collective action from scientists from all over the world working on one human genome to unravel it. And it cost up to 3 billion. And see where we are now today. Today you can already sequence your genome for $1,000 in 1 hour. And they're now working on the technology to make this happen for less than $50 in less than an hour. So what we see now is we got all those amazing companies arising, working with sensors, network, artificial intelligence, VR, synthetic biology, blockchain. But what we now get is the next generation companies who are not like focused on one technology, but who are combining the technologies. So we get a convergence of those technologies. And eventually that will lead to new partnerships, to new business models, and new ecosystems. And that's really interesting because we now have the acceleration. So if we're already talking about exponential growth, it will now be exponential and exponential on top of exponential. But while we have all those technologies in place, I want to bring you back to reality. Because although we're living in the most extraordinary time of history with all these endless possibilities, we're also facing the world's biggest challenges. But we can now use them. So what I did, when I heard those stories, my dad is a cardiologist specialized in genetic heart disease. And every time I heard the stories of parents with sick children searching for a cure, people in their 30s and the 40s who then suddenly developed severe illness, and that search, that endless search. And that made me think, how can it be that people in that situation need to go through such a search process? And it was always the words of my father that I remember when he said, if only we'd had known. And I'm sure we know all the stories in newspapers of people who have been lucky. People who knew somebody who eventually helped them to find a cure. However, in reality, most people are not that lucky. Many people, they cannot find access to the right information within the time they have, or they simply cannot afford it. Well, one story that motivated me to start SocialGenomics, my tech company, is a story of 2 girls. There's Anna from Amsterdam and Sophie from rural Spain. Both girls were diagnosed with a rare brain tumor. And both parents, the doctors told both parents, sorry, we have done all the tests, we looked to the tumor, but we have never seen her case before. And then there's one difference, because 6 months later, Anne went back to school and Sophie passed away. And then you can wonder, how can it be that we have 2 girls with about the same profile, exactly the same disease cause, but living in different parts of the world with such a different outcome? And we're talking about the Netherlands and Spain, which is not even that far away from each other. Well, in this case, it was the mother of Anne who went back to the doctors, and she started talking with all the doctors. And eventually there was one doctor, after long thinking, who knew a doctor in New York. He knew another colleague who was working on an experimental medicine that saved her life. Well, Sophie's parents, they did not have this connection. They were not so lucky. The hospital did not have the connection. And that made the difference between life and death. This story shows the power of one connection to save a life, and the power of global connectivity. So, if we dare to go from local to global, we see we can solve problems that don't need to be problems anymore. And like these girls, there are right now, while you are listening here, more than 800 million people with a rare disease or a rare cancer searching for answers. People who are locally searching, maybe some are more active through the internet, but all they are searching for treatments, for best practices, for people who can help them. So if we talk about rare disease, you can see that locally it might be rare, the doctor might never seen it. But if we think broader, rare does not need to be rare anymore, because it might be more frequent in other places. So, and apart from this group, then of course we have the people who don't even have access to healthcare. So it made me think, if we talk about global connectivity and seeing all those trends and what we can do with the technology that we have, like how can we connect healthcare? And if we then go one step further into the healthcare space, we only have treatments for 5% of all diseases. That means that we still need to find a lot of new treatments for all those diseases that don't have a cure yet. And on one hand, we have all those patients who are searching, but at the other side, we have the healthcare professionals. And did you know that 85% of the clinical trials fails because they can't find the people? So we have people searching who can't find answers, and we have healthcare professionals who can't find the people. So for me, it was a big paradox. And if you think from a human perspective, it's not talking about health, healthcare, disease. This has huge consequences on the economy. People don't go to work, their loved ones, don't go to work. It is impacting children's lives. And then maybe you think like, okay, but we have a good healthcare system in place, that will not happen to me. Then I'm sorry, but we don't have a system yet on a global scale to connect to you based on your specific disease to what you need. So you can be the poorest person or the richest billionaire in the world, but there is not such a solution at the moment. So in a matter of time, I will quickly go further, but what we now have with genomics is that we can use the data. Genomics is a code existing of 4 letters, ACTGs. And instead of just diagnosing you with a disease, what we can do is we can use the data to connect you to the answers you're searching for. And this has massive implications for people. So what we do, we build a patient network 2.0, and our goal is to connect as many patients with rare disease and cancer based on the specific gene mutations that are causing the disease, and then connect them to the biotech and pharmaceutical companies who are searching for those patients to develop treatments. So using technology, we're bridging the gap between patients and between the industry. And we do that by using the internet. So with the more people that come online, the only thing you now need to do is you go online to socialgenomics.co, you register your profile, you share your disease. The more you share, the better we are able to match you, and we use matchmaking algorithms to be able to find people who have exactly the same. And we do that in a way that is not focusing on the current system, but I said, no, we now need to develop new products and platforms that specifically focused on the people who are searching, the people who are using it, and in this case, the patients and the loved ones. So that if we have those 2 girls, if this would have been there, the mother could just have shared the story of Anne to make that available to the parents of Sophie. And those stories, even if they would not find a treatment, by sharing their story, they might help another patient in the future, because through technology we can also learn from the data and multiply the collective knowledge. And the beauty of that is that, well, we're living right here, but if you now think about people in developing countries, there might not be a hospital, there might not be an expert oncologist who is the super expert in a certain topic, but then there might be this network with millions of people who are able to help you. So we can actually start helping each other to create access, and we can make the advice of the best doctor in the world available for the poorest person. Can you imagine? And for me, that is like inventing electricity. We're using the technology to build highways, but not just for cars, but virtually, to connect. And what we then see with treatments, well, I don't know if you're aware of it, but at this moment, treatments are not always approved in all countries at the same time. So if you are diagnosed here with a disease, there might not be a way to treat you, but maybe another person at the other side of the world, there will be a treatment. So we can make that available for everyone. And people in the sub-Saharan Africa to the Mount Everest. And what we then get is this swarm intelligence. So I already mentioned the intelligence part, but it's really like building, like crowdsourcing what you see with companies with the knowledge to build this better world. Another meta trend is the growing population. In the next 5 years, we have 4 billion new people coming online. 4 billion people. And those minds, they are not just people getting online. No, they will join the global conversation. They will be able to share their experiences and to help and come up with creative ways to solve problems in the world. And then what we can do with technology is we can combine the human intelligence with the compute power that we have to accelerate processes. So it's not just about connecting people, it's really about getting connected, and getting connected at any moment, anywhere, anytime. So apart from connecting people to health, what you then can do with the data is we can combine all that data and to develop new treatments based on the genetic code. So this is a colleague in Boston, and he's, for example, engineering synthetic viruses for a specific type of cancer. We get treatments like CRISPR-Cas. We're just using the code to cut out the piece of the faulty gene which is causing a disease. And of course, we will have ethical discussions, but I like to invite you to think about the following. If we only have treatments for 5% of the diseases, and many treatments are super expensive and not affordable for most people in the world, what do you think of developments of such an example of CRISPR-Cas, which only costs like $2 and is very easy to develop? Can you imagine the impact this would have on people in terms of accessibility and affordability? And what we then can do is, with the data, we can not only talk about sick care, we can actually go to health. Like, how can we protect ourselves to live the longest and healthiest life as possible? And that is what people are already doing. We now have people working on longevity, making 100 the new 60s. And this is happening right now. Another topic, I see I'm running out of time, so I'm sorry, but it's the human state of consciousness. I really believe it's not just about technology, it's really about this personal connection creating with each other, the true personal connections. And that has to do with this trend of this new form of the human state of consciousness that allows that. Allows us to move from the old world to the new world. And the old world is all closed. It's based on fear. People don't share. In businesses, you can relate to it, to the current state of the system. While we see in the future, where now it's about sharing. It's about finding people who share the same purpose and find people and partners with complementary skills to go faster. Well, this was Professor Mohamed Yunus I met during the One Young World, and he said, we're struggling against a big machine that is designed to leave people behind. You will probably know if you started your company how difficult it is to start something based on the current system. And that's really a struggle that we need to go through. So to end with a few messages, realize that what you do and what you say has the power to change the world. We have those massive challenges. We have this amazing technology, but eventually we need people to stand up. We need people to go for it. And it all starts with a person. And if you're crazy passionate about what you do, you believe in it, and no one can talk you out of it, you will get the support you need. You will find the people to go with you. And yes, you will fall. So realize that failure is not the end of the story. It's really the start where you start to learn, and it's all about bouncing back. And the earlier you can do that, the faster you will move forward. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. One thing we know for sure, it will not be like the past. So don't look to the past, even if investors or parties ask or force you to go to a business model based on the status quo. Go for what you have in mind and foresee as the future. Because all innovation depends on the unreasonable man. So be that crazy person. Be the one with that crazy idea. Trust on yourself. It's what are your limits, but always wonder what is your passion and follow your heart. So to end, imagination is more important than knowledge. It encircles the world, like Einstein said. I want to thank you, and if you want to reach out, I will be here around and we'll be happy to connect. Thank you.